Now keep in mind, we're talking about the sin offering. And let's get this out there too, and then we'll talk about the congregational sin offering. Let's get this out there so that we understand exactly what we're talking about. The whole idea of judging other people's sin instead of covering other people's sin leads to the destruction of the whole kingdom system. You're making a determination of who's worthy and who isn't worthy. When the kingdom was created for the purpose of covering each other as you get to a certain place. So now keep in mind, in the Pentateuch, we're in the time frame that's being told, not the time frame when this was written. He's telling a story of what was going on in the travel from oppression to a destination. So keeping it in context, we're talking about your travel from oppression to a destination and the mindset that needs to change. Because this is no longer an individual situation. This is a congregational situation. And the levels that are being discussed here are levels of transparency for the individual, for the leader, and for the congregational leadership of this governing body of the kingdom of God, of the kingdom of heaven. Because the law is written within the kingdom of God, which is on earth. Expressed another way, this is how we're supposed to treat each other. We treat each other with the love and respect of bringing our issues transparently to the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, and bringing it to the leadership so that they can cover us, offering up our sacrifice as we come transparently. We're supposed to be accepted by the whole group. But in the arrogance of leadership, if they have not offered up their own sin offering, if they have not offered up their own transparency, they will block the blessings of the individuals that are coming to them. It's the reason why I'm having this conversation with you out of the book of Leviticus, because we're all centrally tied together. The sin offering for the individual within the congregation, the sin offering for the leadership of the priest, and finally the sin offering of the congregation itself. Leviticus, the leadership of the congregation. In Leviticus chapter 4, verse 13, and if the whole congregation of Israel sin through ignorance, and the thing be hid from the eyes of the assembly, don't let that confuse you, congregation and assembly, the whole congregation in the assembly, and they have done with in italicized words somewhat against any of the commandments of the Lord concerning things which should not be done, and are guilty. When the sin which they have sinned against it is known, then the congregation shall offer a young bullock for the sin. And I don't want to go through the whole thing, but it's very similar to the sin offering for the individual. The sin offering for the, but what I want to point out is that first part, which can be confusing to people, and again, study to show yourself approved, where in verse 13, he talks about the congregation sin through ignorance. Verse 13, and if the whole congregation of Israel sin through ignorance. That word for congregation is those who have been assembled together. So I want you to consider this, do your own research, of course. Consider that when he's talking about Israel, he's talking about 12 tribes, technically. You know, the way we understand it, 12 tribes. It's not 12 tribes, but bear with me here. So, because Ephraim and Manasseh. So, Joseph's kids. 12 natural sons. From Ephraim came the Jewish tribe, even though they say it came from Levi. It came from Ephraim, but that's another story. Let's argue about those things later. But with the tribe of Israel, every one of the tribes had a representative. In Africa, Ghana, all the tribes have a representative on the land, and then they have a representative. And it's not just Africa, but also a representative in government. This was something that happened before there was a democracy, a feudal system, and what have you. This was the order of things, to have a representative that represented the tribes, because keep in mind we're talking about 3 million people. So the goal is for that representative body to be clean in their representation of the millions of people that were out there at the time. And I believe that's why it says, and if the whole congregation representing the assembled together by appointment people, those are the representatives that represented the assembly, because it says sin through ignorance and the thing be hid from the eyes of the assembly. That word assembly is the congregation, the organized body. And they have done any of the commandments of, against any of the commandments. So there is an offering for you too. Leadership. And that offering is to bring to the door of the congregation of the tabernacle and make yourself known before you're made known, and offer a sin offering. Again, young bullock, blood on the horns, blood at the foot of the altar, blood representing the mercy of God. He shed his blood for you. But falling on the mercy of the people that you're leading, because there has to be accountability. What we're dealing with today in the year 2023 is a lack of accountability and a rush for there not to be accountability. And what I mean by that is even though the leadership of this world may represent or say they represent a group of people, they're not making themselves known. So the lack of transparency cuts off the blessing. So the blessing is is the ability to multiply and win battles, because you're not really unified. You're cutting yourself off from unification, from the people that you represent, because of a lack of transparency. It's the way I see it. But you still have the responsibility of doing a little research. Leviticus chapter 4.